What is up, everybody? My name is Logan Sharon, and welcome to CTF Sharon Talks. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my Week 9 NFL reaction. There's a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. But first of all, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. With all that out of the way, let's get started. The first game we had was on Thursday Night Football on Halloween night. We had the Texans at the Jets, and this was a boring one. And this game went a whole different direction. I thought the Texans were going to have control of this game, but it ended up being the Jets. The Texans looked awful. Looking at the Texans, C.J. Stroud having another bad game, 11 for 30, 191 yards, and not a single score. He's been really disappointing this year. I love C.J. Stroud, but he's got to get his shit together. Joe Mixon did have a good game, 24 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown. He's been carrying this team for a couple weeks now. But I will say the Texans are pretty limited in receivers because both of their stars, Nico Collins and Diggs, are out. So Tank Dell had to take the start with 6 receptions, 126 yards, and no score. But don't forget about Tank Dell, though. He's a dog. Now, when you look at the Jets here, let's look at Aaron Rodgers, 23 for 32, 211 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had a damn good game. Breece Hall was okay in the rushing, 15 for 74, not a single score. And then when you look at receiving, you've got Davante Adams leading the way with 7 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And then Garrett Wilson having 9 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. We'll get to one of them later. And then looking at the Jets defense, they were all over the place, having a total of 8 sacks. Wow. So, yep, that was Thursday Night Football and a great win for the Jets. Now, before I go up to the next game, I wanted to do a new thing every single reaction video called the Play of the Week, where I show you the best play out of the whole week and analyze it so you people can see how amazing it was. Because I liked what I did the Hail Mary one last week, so I think if I did this every week, it would be pretty cool. As a matter of fact, the play of the week is actually from this game. And my new annual play of the week will go to when Garrett Wilson one-handed caught this ball right here from Aaron Rodgers. Throws a deep bomb, literally recreates the Michael Jordan shoe logo, and one hand catches this one. This was an amazing catch. And Garrett Wilson was actually amazing in this game. I think he's a lot better receiver than the Davante right now. So, yep, this earns the play of the week. The next game we got was the Saints at the Panthers. And, yep, this is exactly what I thought. I said the Panthers were going to win by 1 point, and they did. I'd be a lot more upset if the Saints didn't do anything about this, but they did. I'll get to that after I go over the stats, so let's go over them right now. So looking at Derek Carr in the passing, he was 18 for 31, 236, and 1 touchdown. He was okay. Alvin Kamara in the rushing was absolutely electric. He had 29 carries for 155 yards. Taysom Hill had a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was also led by Alvin Kamara with 6 receptions and 60 yards. That just shows how much he's been carrying this team. But you can't blame anything on Chris Olave. He got another dirty hit to the head again. And again, they didn't eject the player. They didn't call targeting. It's BS. But yeah, he has concussion right now. Hopefully he recovers. And then the Saints defense had a total of 1 sack and 1 pick. It's crazy how the Saints have gone from being an elite defense to one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Now looking at the Panthers, the legendary Bryce Young put up 16 for 26, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Rushing was led by Chuba Hubbard with 15 carries, 72 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And receiving was led by Jatavion Sanders with 4 receptions, 81 yards, and not a single score, but Xavier Legette had a touchdown. And then the Panthers defense had a total of 1 sack, one being by Charles Harris. So, yep, again, I'd be a lot more upset, but we did fire Dennis Allen. I obviously went over that last video, but I just wanted to get into the stats first. So, yep, he is finally gone. He's a horrible head coach. I never want to see him around this organization again. And hopefully we have a good future. I think we're going to tank to get a high draft pick. Right now, we hold the 3rd overall pick. So, I think we're going to tank and hopefully get some young, good talent. So, the future may be bright. Right now, I don't see us winning that many games. The next game we got was the Commanders at the Giants, and the Giants almost made a hilarious comeback at the end. The Commanders had a firm grasp at a W in the 3rd quarter, and then the Giants almost made a hilarious comeback in the 4th quarter, but the Commanders still won this game, and they are now 7-2. They have been really good this year. Now looking at the Giants here, Daniel Jones was pretty good, 20 for 26, 174, and 2 touchdowns. Rushing was led by Tyrone Tracy Jr. with 16 carries and 66 yards. He was all right, but Daniel Jones had 7 for 54 and a touchdown in rushing. That was pretty good. And then receiving was a kind of a meh, but it was led by Malik Neighbors, 9 receptions for 59 yards, not a single score. But Theo Johnson had 3 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown. Chris Manhertz had a touchdown. And then the Giants defense did not do a single thing, not a single sack and not a single interception. So they really didn't put any pressure on the Commanders in this game at all. Now looking at the Commanders here, Jake Daniels continues to light it up. 15 for 22, 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rushing was kind of lousy, but it was led by Chris Rodriguez Jr. with 11 carries and 52 yards. Austin Eckler had a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by Noah Brown with 5 receptions and 60 yards, not a single score. But scary Terry McLaurin had 2 receiving touchdowns. And then the Commanders' defense, again, not really doing a single thing. Not a single sack, not a single pick. This was mostly an offensive game, it looks like. So, yep, good win by the Commanders and the Giants. Hopefully next week we'll Next game we got was the Dolphins at the Bills, and this was a shockingly entertaining game. I thought the Bills were going to beat them down like the first time, but wow, this was actually a great game. The Bills still won. They're now 7-2. The Dolphins are now 2-6, but this was entertaining. Looking at the Dolphins here, Tua was pretty good, 25 for 28, 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rushing was led by Devon Achane with 12 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Raheem Mostert had 10 carries for 56 yards. And then receiving was led by Tyreek Hill with 4 receptions, 80 yards, not a single score. Devon Achane had 8 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. And then Jalen Waddle had a receiving touchdown. Other than that, he was awful in this game. Wow. And then the Dolphins defense had a sack, that being from Chop Robinson, and then an interception by Jalen Ramsey. Now looking at the Bills here, Josh Allen was pretty good, 25 for 39, 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Rushing was absolutely lousy, James Cook only having 10 carries and 44 yards. And receiving was led by Ray Davis with 2 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Mac Hollins had a receiving touchdown, and Quentin Morris had a receiving touchdown. And then the Bills defense having only a total of 1 sack. So you have a great game by the Bills. They are now 7-2, one of the best AFC teams in the league right now. And the Dolphins continue to struggle and continue to get wins even with Tua. So there's a lot they need to figure out. Next, we've got the Chargers at the Browns. And wow, the fact the Browns can beat the Ravens one week and then the next week look absolutely horrible. Looking at the Browns here, Jameis absolutely struggled. 26 for 46, 235 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 picks. Rushing was terrible. Nick Chubb still hasn't been able to find his way again. 15 for 39, not a single score. And receiving was also not that good. Cedric Tillman was the leading receiver at 6 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy having 7 receptions for 73 yards, not a single score. And then looking at the Browns defense, they were actually pretty productive. 6 sacks on total of the day, 3 of them being by Myles Garrett. He's still a machine. But they still couldn't find the way to get the job done. Now looking at the Chargers here, Justin Herbert went 18 for 27, 282 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty clean. Rushing was okay. J.K. Dobbins was leading rushing with 14 carries for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then leading receiving was Quentin Johnson, finally having a big boy game. 4 receptions for 118 yards and 1 touchdown. And then Joshua Palmer having 2 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown. Wow. And then looking at the Chargers defense, they were also very productive, having a total of 6 sacks and a total of 3 interceptions. So despite all the doubts the Chargers have been facing by multiple NFL fans, the Chargers still continue to win these games, and now they are sitting 5-3. Next game we got was the Patriots at the Titans, and this was also shockingly a pretty entertaining game. Looking at the Patriots here, Drake May was a little spotty, but also good. 29 for 41, 206 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Rushing was also led by Drake May with 8 carries for 95 yards. He did better than most running backs this week. Ramondre Stevenson was absolutely terrible, 10 for 16 yards and a touchdown. And receiving was led by Hunter Henry with 7 receptions and 56 yards. Ramondre Stevenson having a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Patriots defense, they only had a total of 1 sack and 1 pick. Now looking at the Titans here, Mason Rudolph was pretty good, 20 for 33, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Rushing was led by Tony Pollard, who was absolutely electric, 28 for 128 yards. And then receiving was led by Calvin Ridley with 5 receptions for 73 yards, not a single score. But Nick Westbrook-Ikhine had 5 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. And Nick Vannett had a receiving touchdown as well. And then looking at the Titans defense, they had a total of 4 sacks and 2 picks, both being by Amani Hooker. So the Titans got a very nice overtime win against the Patriots, and this was a pretty entertaining team. Next game we got was the Cowboys at the Falcons, and this is what I get for giving the Cowboys any hope to win a game. So looking at the Cowboys here, Dak Prescott had 18 for 24, 133 yards and a touchdown. He ended up getting hurt in the game. He's going to be out for multiple weeks. So Cooper Rush came in, threw for 13 for 25, 115 yards and a touchdown. He almost looked better than Dak Prescott. Rushing was led by Rico Dowdle with 12 carries and 75 yards. This has to be the worst running back room in all of football. And receiving was led by Jake Ferguson with 7 receptions for 71 yards and not a single score. But receiving touchdowns were by Rico Dowdle and Jalen Tolbert. And then looking at the Cowboys defense, they really did not do much, but they had 2 sacks, both of them being by Carl Lawson. Looking at the Falcons here, Kirk Cousins was pretty good, 19 for 24, 222 yards and 3 touchdowns, pretty clean. Rushing was led by Bijan Robinson with 19 carries, 86 yards, not a single score, but Tyler Algier had a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by Darnell Mooney with 5 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. 2 receiving touchdowns by Ray-Ray McCloud and Drake London. And then the Falcons defense had a total of 3 sacks on the day. So, the Falcons win the close game, and they are now 6-3, and the Cowboys stood me up after I gave them any praise, so I'm not picking you guys again. I should have saw this shit. The next game we got was the Raiders at the Bengals, and wow, this was a messy game for the Raiders. I mean, this is what I predicted, but my goodness. Looking at the Raiders now, Gardner Minshew absolutely struggled with 10 for 17, 124 yards, not a single score. He eventually got benched by Desmond Ridder, who had 11 for 16, 74 yards and a touchdown. Rushing was absolutely terrible, only 1 rushing touchdown by Zamir White. And then receiving was led by Jacoby Myers with 8 receptions and 105 yards and 1 receiving touchdown by Brock Bowers. And then the Raiders defense had a total of 1 sack and 1 pick on the day. Now looking at the Bengals here, Joe Burrow was absolutely great, 27 for 39, 251 yards, 5 touchdowns and only 1 pick. Rushing was actually good for once for the Bengals. Leading it was Chase Brown, 27 for 120 yards, not a single score, but really good production. And receiving was led by Mike Gesicki with 5 receptions, hitting 100 yards right on the dot and 2 touchdowns. Receiving touchdowns by Chase Brown, Drew Sample, and Adric Yoshivas. I like to call him Yoshi. And then the Bengals defense had a total of 5 sacks, 4 of them being by Trey Hendrickson, one absolute stud. So the Bengals get a much-needed win at home, and the Raiders are continuing to suck, and they're continuing to tank. Before moving on to the next game, I actually got some live news right here. Marshon Lattimore just got traded to the Commanders. I had a feeling he was going to go. Those rumors were sparking up, man. So, I hope he finds success on his new team, and I'm going to miss Marshon a little bit, but I'm definitely going to miss the Mike Evans versus Marshon Lattimore fights every year. That was entertaining. But, good luck on the rest of your career. Next game we got is the Broncos at the Ravens, and wow, talk about a team getting exposed. Looking at the Broncos here, Bo Nix absolutely struggled, 19 for 33, 223 yards, not a single touchdown, throwing 1 pick. Rushing was terrible, Javonte Williams only having 12 carries for 42 yards, not a single score from any other running back. Receiving was pretty productive by only 1 receiver, that being Courtland Sutton, 7 receptions for 122 yards, not a single score. And then looking at the Broncos defense, they really did not do much, and it was only led by 1 sack on the day. Looking at the Ravens here, Lamar Jackson was great, 16 for 19, 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. Rushing was led by Derrick Henry with 23 carries, 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been amazing. And he finally hit 1,000 receiving yards in Week 9. That's impressive with the age he's at right now. And then receiving was led by Zay Flowers with 5 receptions, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely electric. Patrick Richard had a receiving touchdown as well. And then the Ravens defense having a total of 4 sacks and 1 interception. So, the Ravens are doing what they do best, exposing teams in the regular season until they get exposed themselves in the playoffs. Next game we got is the Bears at the Cardinals, and the Bears are going back to their old Week 1 ways. Looking at the Bears right now, Caleb Williams was not that good. 22 for 41, 217 yards, not a single score. Rushing was okay. It was led by DeAndre Swift, 16 carries for 51 yards, not a single score there. And then receiving was led by Rome Aduzie with 5 receptions, 144 yards, and not a single score from receiving at all. So you're probably asking yourself, how the Bears did score? They scored all their points by Carlos Santos, their kicker. 9 points on the day. Wow. And then the Bears defense had a total of 2 sacks. So I've never seen the Bears be this low on defense before this season. They struggled. Now looking at the Cardinals here, even Kyler Murray was not that impressive. 13 for 20, 154 yards, not a single score. Rushing was led by James Conner with 18 carries, 107 yards, not a single touchdown. But there are rushing touchdowns all over the board. One being by Amari Demercado, Trey Benson, and Trey McBride, the tight end. Wow. And receiving was absolutely lousy. The only leading receiver was Trey McBride with 3 receptions and 35 yards. And then looking at the Cardinals defense, they were extremely productive, having a total of 6 sacks on the day. So this game was pretty much a snooze fest, but the Cardinals got a much needed win, and they are now 5-4 on top of their division right Next now. Game we got was the Jaguars at the Eagles, and the Eagles almost hilariously choked this game. This would have been awesome to see, but the Eagles still came up with the win. Looking at the Jaguars here, Trevor Lawrence was not great at all, only having 16 for 31, 169 yards, and 2 picks. Wow. Rushing was lousy. Travis Etienne continues to be terrible this year, only having 3 carries for 24 yards. Trevor Lawrence did have 2 rushing touchdowns. And then receiving was also lousy. Leading was Evan Ingram with only 5 receptions for 45 yards. And then looking at the Jaguars defense, they only had a total of 2 sacks, both being by Josh Hines-Allen. Looking at the Eagles here, Jalen Hurts played a very clean game, 18 for 24, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns, not a single turnover. Rushing was led by Saquon Barkley, who continues to be electric, 27 for 159 yards and 1 touchdown, a rushing touchdown from Jalen Hurts as well. And then receiving was led by Devontae Smith with 4 receptions, 87 yards and a touchdown. Saquon also had a receiving touchdown, while A.J. Brown really did not do much in this game. And then looking at the Eagles defense, they had a total of 2 sacks and a total of 2 picks. So again, this would have been absolutely hilarious to see the Eagles choke this game, but they still came up with the win. And I'm telling you, even though the Jaguars are 2-7, they're not as bad as their record shows. Like they're bad, but they're not that Next bad. Game we got was the Rams at the Seahawks, and this was another great game this week. Jalen Hurts was good, but also bad, having 21 for 34, 363 yards, 3 touchdowns, but having 3 picks. Rushing was just okay, with 25 carries for 83 yards by Kenneth Walker. And then receiving was led by Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was absolutely amazing this week. 7 receptions for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He lit it up. Tyler Lockett with 3 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown as well. And then looking at the Seahawks defense, they really did not do much other than having 1 interception by Tariq Woolen. Now looking at the Rams here, Matthew Stafford was also great. 25 for 44, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. Rushing was led by Kyren Williams, who was shockingly underwhelming, 22 carries for 69 yards, not a single score. And then receiving was led by Cooper Kupp with 11 receptions and 104 yards, not a single touchdown, but 2 receiving touchdowns from Demarcus Robinson, one of them being the game-winning touchdown grab. Also, one thing to note, Puka Nacua did get ejected from this game in the first quarter. He threw a punch, even though it really wasn't a punch, but yep, he got ejected. And then looking at the Rams defense, they were very productive with a total of 7 sacks and 3 interceptions. So great game, but the Rams did come up with a win, a much needed win. They were now at a 500 record, and now they're starting to make noise. This game we got was the Lions at the Packers, and this was supposed to be the game of the week, but this really was not much of a game. This was actually more of a blowout than the game shows right here. Looking at Jordan Love, he was not that great. 23 for 39, 273 yards, and 1 Brett Favre-like interception. Rushing was all right. Josh Jacobs leading with 13 carries for 95 yards, not a score, but Emmanuel Wilson had a rushing touchdown. And receiving was led by Jaden Reed, who finally had a good game. 5 receptions for 113 yards, not a single score. And then looking at the Packers defense, they had a total of only 1 sack on the day. Now looking at the Lions, Jared Goff really did not throw for that much, but he was pretty clean. 18 for 22, for 145 yards, and a touchdown. Rushing was okay. It was led by David Montgomery with 17 carries for 73 yards, not a single score, but Jahmyr Gibbs did have 11 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. And then receiving was led by Amon-Ra St. Brown with 7 receptions, 56 yards, and his usual touchdown for every game. And then looking at the Lions defense, they really did not do much other than 1 interception by Kirby Joseph. Also, another live reaction here. Za'Darius Smith also just got traded to the Lions, so that's going to be a lot of help for this Lions team. But yep, the Lions just add on to their win count, and they are now 7-1 with the second best record in the NFL. And the next game we got was Sunday Night Football. It was the Colts at the Vikings, and this was a lot closer of a game than I thought it was going to be. Also, I like to make fun of the fact that people are trying to make fun of Thursday Night Football and Monday Night Football being a lot worse than Sunday Night Football, but it's actually been the other way around. Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football have actually been pretty decent this year. Well, Sunday Night Football has been terrible. We've gotten some boring-ass games this year. Okay, little rant over. Let's look at the Colts here. Joe Flacco was not that great. 16 for 27, 179 yards, not a single touchdown, throwing 1 interception. Rushing was also terrible. Jonathan Taylor being shockingly bad in this game. 13 carries for 48 yards, not a single score. And then receiving was led by Josh Downs with 6 receptions, 60 yards, and not a single touchdown from any receiver on this board. And also, let's give credit to the kicker, Matt Gay, who kicked 7 other points. And then looking at the Colts defense, they had a total of 4 sacks and 2 picks. Their 6 other points must have been from the defense, but it's not showing like what it was from. Looking at the Vikings here, Sam Darnold had a good game, but he's also showing a little bit of flaws still, having 28 for 34, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, but throwing 2 picks. Rushing was led by Aaron Jones with only 21 carries and 64 yards. I've been seeing a trend this week. Rushing was really lousy this week. And then receiving was led by Justin Jefferson with 7 receptions, 137 yards, not a single score. But we did get receiving touchdowns by Josh Oliver and Jordan Addison. Sadly not from TJ Hawkinson, who's finally back. I'm happy he's back. And also Jalen Naylor having a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Vikings defense, they had a total of 3 sacks and 1 interception. So again, pretty boring Sunday Night Football game, but the Vikings did come up with a very needed win, and they are still 6-2, and they're still sitting. Finally, the last game of the week, Monday Night Football, we had the Bucs at the Chiefs, and this was the best game of the week. Despite all of the injuries with the receivers, Baker Mayfield is still being great with 23 for 31, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But just like all the other games this week, rushing was absolutely terrible, and Bucky Irving was leading with 7 carries for 24 yards. But Rachaad White did have a rushing touchdown. I almost forgot to leave that out. That would have felt terrible. Receiving was led by Cade Otton with 8 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. And Ryan Miller also had a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Bucs defense, they had a total of 4 sacks, 2 of them being by Vita Vea. Now looking at the Chiefs here, Patrick Mahomes had a great game, 34 for 44, 291 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Rushing was led by Kareem Hunt with 27 carries, 106 yards, and the game-winning rushing touchdown at the end of overtime. And then receiving was led by Travis Kelce with 14 receptions for 100 yards, not a single score. But DeAndre Hopkins had 8 receptions for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Samaje Perine had a receiving touchdown as well. And then looking at the Chiefs' defense, they really did not do much. They only had a total of 2 sacks on the day. So, yep, great game, great overtime win by the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are still undefeated at 8-0. I wouldn't be shocked if they went undefeated this year. They have been good, but also playing down the competition, but they have been doing enough to win every game. And that was my Week 9 NFL reaction. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. With all that said, I'm Logan Sherrone. I'll see you next time.